Contact with Hitomi and the bunker was lost almost immediately after Scorpion's departure at the end of last episode. That was over 50 days ago. Scorpion's balloon went down shortly after the bunker went dark, thus leaving him stranded on the equator over 20 days' travel by foot away from the bunker. This trek back to the bunker was made only more difficult thanks to an especially brutal ongoing winter, one that made even the green belt itself disappear under a blanket of ice and snow. Now, after months of traversing across this frozen RimWorld, Scorpion is finally nearing the bunker. Before he makes his final stretch to the bunker, Scorpion finishes assembling a small, relatively fast dirt bike, with parts salvaged from various car and tank wrecks found along the freezing expanse. The bike won't be able to carry much, and it can hardly gain any traction on the ice, but it's better than nothing. Whatever happened within the last 100 days, you can hardly tell this place was ever once our home. The entrance to the bunker has been substituted by a flesh mass heart. Whatever once lied beneath us, the bunker itself, no longer exists. Not all was lost, however. Two familiar faces are stuck within a nearby ruin, the first being Hitomi, who is no longer the human we last saw her as. She's a sanguiphage now, one shot to the point of lying in a state of torpor. The other familiar face, as you can see, is none other than our stallion Boa, who has seemingly survived off of a series of rations that have been left from some bygone massacre of before. Scorpion will do everything he can to secure the immediate area. Meanwhile, a surprising amount of trade caravans of all different kinds keep showing up on the territory itself. It's nice to see some semblance of life in this place, even if the bunker itself is just a scavenging grounds. Unfortunately, the freezing temperatures, hostile nodes of flesh, and hordes of shamblers, all of which are littered about the ruins of this place, it makes it hard for anybody to remain here for any meaningful amount of time. And the planet is in such a decrepit state that, I'll be real, most of these traders that we are able to speak to have little to nothing worthy of trade. Nothing that we want, at least. Or, well, nothing we can afford either. We really should get the hell out of here, but we're gonna have to make the most of our time here in these ruins. There's plenty of good loot and lots of food. There's all sorts of things that we can try to grab, so long as we can breach the flesh and hopefully not aggravate it in order to reach those things. Despite having only been here for about a day, Scorpion's mental state has already begun to rapidly deteriorate from, well, exposure to the elements, lack of good sleep, lack of recreation, lack of hope, lack of safety, lack of semblance, lack of direction, lack of a place to call home. The memories of the damned that haunt this poor man and keep him up at night. On the morning of day 2 of Scorpion's return home, we begin to scavenge the local ruins from, I don't know, seems all sorts of people have tried to occupy this place, though it seems all have, at some point, failed in their endeavors to secure this territory. Any loot that's too far from our makeshift homestead at the moment, Scorpion will use Boa to retrieve. Which is really cool, finally seeing him ride this damn horse. I just wish the circumstances were better. The other reason we're remaining here has mainly to do with the simple fact that Scorpion, dirt bike and horse included, won't be able to form a caravan capable of towing all of the loot we find alongside the highly crippled and torpid Hitomi herself, which leads us to refactoring these particular rooms of the ruin in hopes of making a garage workbench that allows us to jerry-rig something together that has 4 wheels instead of 2. Meanwhile, as expected, the flesh takes notice of our presence and eagerly grows in our wake. Pause. Garage workbenches do require a hefty amount of steel and components to build, and it even requires power, but the power shouldn't be an issue. As you can see, there's an entire vanometric power cell, or well, the small variation of a vanometric power cell, sat between Scorpion and an entire wall of flesh. There's only a handful of vehicles we can realistically hope to assemble, but none of that matters until we can power the assembly itself. Even if we can't power the assembly itself, Scorpion will still scavenge for the parts needed to assemble the car ahead of time, all while peeling away small strips of flesh in hopes of reaching the power cell. But of course, the flesh always retaliates. Once the flesh beasts are dealt with, thankfully without any issue, Scorpion attempts to build a stone fireplace to cook some of his catches. But without any wood in sight, he'll just have to strip the carcasses bare and eat them as is. Boa can't survive off of raw meat, though the horse can survive on simple meals even if they're made from raw meat. I don't know how that works. Don't ask me how that works. We can't waste any time nor show any restraint here. The flesh will regrow. We have to continue boring to the power cell. Thankfully, the flesh backs down for long enough such that Scorpion retrieves, then installs the power cell. The power cell only produces 450 watts, meaning we'll have to divert power between the part assembler and the stove itself. So long as everything remains calm as it is now, we should be out of here in no time. Shortly after Hitomi is kidnapped, Scorpion falls into a mental breakdown during his attempts to heal Boa, who is going to bleed out in less than 5 hours. Boa bleeds out only mere moments after Scorpion regains his composure. Thank you. Let it be known that none, not Scorpion, not Hitomi, not anybody of the past, none have demonstrated greater courage nor sacrifice. None have endured more suffering than Boa. None have remained trapped in that damn bunker longer than Boa. He who has been with us since the times before this planet collapsed into a Mechanoid-induced frozen hell. Despite all of what Boa had to endure, his choice to jump in the way of the bullets certainly saved Hitomi's unlife. He died a hero, on his terms. A testament to all that Scorpion and I have failed in our attempts to carve out a home on this godless frontier. May you ride in Sovngarde, you bastard. As for us, well, our time here on the bunker has come to an immediate and permanent end. We'll take what little we can carry and set about wandering the frozen expanse, with no place to call home. Despite all that was lost, there is still hope. The approaching summer months are already bringing an end to this especially devastating winter. The green belt is already beginning to emerge from the ice along the equator, and with it, the discovery of a signal that could honestly change everything. Scorpion had little trouble during his tenure wandering the expanse, drifting from ruin to ruin. His parka was more than enough to brave the cold, and the vanometric power cell allowed Scorpion to manufacture something far more suitable to crossing the wastes and reaching the signal he detected. Even better, Scorpion didn't have to make this trip alone. This is a profaned undead human nicknamed Gasp. Scorpion found him beaten to near final death by a horde of shamblers about 4 days ago, while scavenging for fuel. We have to pull over every other day or so to feed the crippled undead. Zombies gotta eat after all. Gasp is a unique psi-casting variant of Profaned, who was in possession of a Profane-themed psi-casting staff and Profaned psi-caster armor to match it. I decided to keep him as a sort of narrative-friendly excuse for us to perform and unlock research on the profaned research tree itself. And I hate to say it, but having a necromancer, psycast, or whatever locked in our RV is just cool. Also, welcome to the interior of Scorpion's latest innovation, a big friggin' camper van. It's just an RV. It can haul a shitload, travel a shit ton of distance, and it has interior cabin access, which you're seeing now. It has everything we need to take Scorpion to the source of the signal that he's been following, which is about a 5 days drive away. At last, Scorpion reaches the source of the signal, an ancient stockpile within the Scarlands. Scarlands are essentially the ruins of a past civilization that were wiped out by weapons of mass destruction. They're only so livable, but Scorpion has made more with less. I think we'll be just fine here. The stockpiles themselves will have to be hacked open, which is gonna take a couple days. Looks like we're gonna have to call the Scarlands home for the time being. After resting up, feeding himself and his prisoner, Scorpion will venture outside and begin clearing out the local ruin that we've parked alongside. One of the ruins has an ancient self-powered auto turret that I almost destroyed before realizing we're much better off using it to our advantage. The rest of Day Zero is spent gathering nearby steel and staging the blueprint to convert this ruin into a base. We'll deploy some steel spike traps and patch any holes in the walls with steel bars. Once all the preliminary defenses are put in place, Scorpion will catch a bullet or two while opening up the door for the security turret ahead of time. The goal here being to let any would-be enemies run through the turret and then our spike traps should they try to go after us. I'm leaving the doors open because, as I'm sure you're aware, most enemies or hostiles will be baited by the open doors. But, I don't know. I guess we'll have to see how that pans out when everything goes inevitably wrong, right? Later on the evening of the first day within the Scarlands, Scorpion will initiate the first hacking attempt on one of the stockpile hatches, which gives us a good idea on how long the process will take. Danger finally approaches on the morning of the next day in the form of a couple of scary-ridden man-hunting rats, which are thankfully taken care of by the ancient auto turret that was already here. That last rat wasn't dangerous, it just looked tasty. Speaking of tasty, Scorpion will hunt down some of the local boomalopes from the comfort of his shelled-out camp. I'm sure Scorpion will appreciate having some fresh game for dinner, as opposed to the never-ending supply of mushrooms he's somehow survived off of. Same goes for Gasp. I'm sure the profane much prefer eating flesh over mushrooms. Not to stereotype the profane as flesh-eating zombies or anything. Funny enough, as Scorpion rests, I realize his RV interior is technically far too clean and luxurious for the waster. Given his inherent asceticism, Scorpion finds comfort in one of the shelled-out ruins itself upon an empty cot. There's something comforting about the desolation-induced quiet, separate from the humming of batteries and engines. Pretty much all the morning hours of the following day are spent hacking the Stockpile entrance. After that, Scorpion will begin his next project, which involves refactoring the interior of the RV itself. The first step of this process involves dismantling our chem fuel refineries and garage workbenches, then replacing them with a temporary subcore encoder. We'll only need the encoder to produce 5 subcores for now. Once the subcores are made, we'll dismantle the encoder and replace it with a Mechanoid gestator and 2 Mechanoid rechargers. Our power cells can only realistically power one of the Mechanoid chargers as well as the gestator without burgeoning our overall power supply, for now at least. After that, we'll begin gestating our first Mechanoid and then get back to work focusing on the task at hand, the Stockpile entrances. Unfortunately, Scorpion locks himself out of the terminal for the time being. It's just a common process of hacking. You'll occasionally get locked out of the terminal for several hours at a time. In this case, 16 hours, which gives us plenty of time to focus our efforts elsewhere. The rest of the day is spent establishing our home zone and setting up a basic Nutrifungus farm, as well as attempting to hack open a separate stockpile hatch. By the time the formers are said and done, our first Mechanoid's gestation process completes. Meet Green Thumb Generation 2. Long may he serve. We'll also have to deal with the toxic waste produced by GG2 and the rest of the Mechanoids that we'll produce. But we'll circle back to that in a moment. Not so long after this, as I eye up some steel sat along the beach, Scorpion is sent a gift from the Western Republic. Looks like we're having deep-fried fish for breakfast. And also we got a hold of ourselves some really high-quality medkits, so that was nice of them. A while later, after finishing construction on a toxic waste pack generator, our next Mechanoid, Printer Gen 2, finishes its gestation period and comes into this world glistening and I don't know what I'm trying. Okay, anyway. We'll have to construct a second waste pack generator in order to burn all the toxic waste packs we're gonna accumulate from the Mechanoids contained within our RV. We'll worry about that shortly. As Scorpion returns to hacking the stockpile, Green Thumb G2 can also make itself useful by tending to our frozen-over mushroom farm. We begin gestating the next Mechanoid on the evening of our 7th day in the Scarlands. On the morning of the 8th day, then, we're sent a care package from the Western Republic in the form of a whole new set of synth-red clothes and packaged survival meals, which completely overhauls Scorpion's fit. Oh wait, I'm just now realizing this isn't synthread, this is hyperweave. Scorpion got himself some new hyperweave drip. Anyway. On the evening of our 8th day within the Scarlands, as Printer clears out debris from the ruins, our next Mechanoid completes its gestation. LiftBot G2, welcome to the Scarlands. We'll have to stay on top of all the toxic waste packs that will inevitably be accumulated from having an RV full of robots. It would only take a handful of days for the unmanaged waste to turn the interior of this RV into, Chernobyl. On the morning of day 9, Scorpion enjoys breakfast alongside his imprisoned, sapient, psi-casting zombie, Gasp. Scorpion, having regressed to some Joel Miller, Daryl Dixon archetype, has virtually zero opinion on Gasp himself. Despite regularly engaging in conversation, it seems all of this is just a tactic for Scorpion to continue extracting information from Gasp. Specifically, information on the profaned, the species of Gasp himself. From a narrative perspective, I mean, just imagine your favorite, zombie apocalypse protagonist encountering a zombie that could talk and doesn't infect. You're damn right we're keeping it in a cage. On the topic of the profaned Gasp himself, despite being inherently hostile, the zombie still holds Scorpion in high regard, since Scorpion technically saved the zombie's unlife. Couple that with Scorpion's overall approachable nature, and it seems the only thing Gasp is complaining about is not having a big enough cell. Profaned are conditionally immortal. It seems Gasp is perfectly fine with outliving Scorpion if that's what it'll take before he can escape. Right, with all that out of the way, you might have noticed Scorpion having completed the construction of the second wastepack generator, as well as kicking off the gestation of our next Mechanoid. Thanks to the presence of these Mechanoids, which can do just about anything Scorpion can do, and working together, Scorpion himself can divert his focus solely on hacking open the stockpile itself. The next Mechanoid, our G2 Cleansweeper, is hatched from gestation on the evening of day 10, leaving only one more Mechanoid to gestate before our mech army can be considered complete, for now at least. On the topic of mechs, in the early hours of day 11, Liftbot and Printer work together deploying a rudimentary defense system using our power cells and turrets that we've had stowed away in the RV. It turns out one power cell was more than enough to power both turrets, so I decided to use the other one to power a heater within the ruin containing our mushroom farm. That should help with the freezing temperatures. Meanwhile, on the morning of our 11th day here in the Scarlands, Scorpion finally hacks open one of the ancient stockpile entrances and descends below. My mind can't help but drift back to the bunker all over again. This place seems more than worthy of securing and calling home. But calling this stockpile home isn't exactly the goal here. We're looking for the source of the signal we've been tracking this entire time. After hacking a nearby terminal, which unlocks some distant unseen door, Scorpion hacks open one of the many mag-locked doors itself. We find the very blast door Scorpion hacked open just a moment later. One of the rooms contains an insect hive, so Scorpion will fall back and recuperate for now. Scorpion doesn't return to the stockpile until early next morning, shortly after midnight, while the hive is asleep. One of the rooms we open, the one that happens to be the most important room in the facility, contains a hunter trap that immediately activates and begins closing in on Scorpion, who is now running like hell back outside the bunker. Thankfully, Scorpion is able to make it out unharmed. Even better, the hunter drone changes target and closes in on the insectoids themselves. The subsequent explosion nearly kills off the bugs present. We'll circle back to them in a moment. For now, it seems our next and final Mechanoid, Ankle-Biter Gen 2, has finished gestating. After nearly 2 days worth of bleeding out, The bugs go postal and begin tearing down the doors and walls of the stockpile. I would have left them down there to bleed had it not been for their decision to begin attacking one of the rooms with the contents that we absolutely need to preserve. Now that the stockpile has been secured, it's time for Scorpion to grab the contents that I've been elusive about. Time for me to reveal my hand. This room contains a grav core, alongside rows and rows of grav light panels. But the panels and grav core are used in a variety of grav lift related tech, which is something Scorpion has never encountered before. If we play our cards right, Scorpion can use this grav lift technology to assemble an orbital platform that would allow us to leave the surface of the planet entirely. All we need now is a grav engine, which arrives shortly after Scorpion removes the grav core from the stockpile itself, specifically in the form of a ship crash. A quick look at the wreckage reveals the grav engine assumedly connected to the grav core that we recovered, which sustains only mild damage from the crash. Thankfully, amazingly, rainfall happens only moments later, ultimately saving the grav engine from any lasting damage. We'll have Scorpion douse the fires and patch the hole in our roof caused from the wreckage, while LiftBot G2 begins gathering everything from the wreck. Not so long after that, Scorpion reclaims the grav engine itself. Now that the grav core is secured, we can focus on scrounging some free batteries left behind from the crash. With the grav engine secured and analyzed, I suppose we can divert our focus from researching the profane and instead research grav engine technology itself. It's already giving Scorpion plenty to think about. Should we get off the world ASAP? Or take our time and fit the RV onto it? Should we recruit Gasp and unlock the secrets of undeath? How should we even design the ship? And I guess, the greatest question of all, what are we going to find if we get off world?